is a lot taller than most of us.
It's just my personality.
That's right, grander. Did everyone receive a button? And if not, come fetch one later on. That's the key to your writing success, is the button. Now, thank you, dear. Do you like this better? Or do you like this better?
There.
There, all right. I'll give it to you. We'll just do a little moving instead. I appreciate you having me, Linda. Yes, I don't know how dynamic I'll be today, considering that was over 20 years ago when we first met. Things have slowed down a little. I'll try though. I appreciate you guys coming out. Usually I wait to tell the secret of the button until the end of the workshop, because it's fun to make you think about it. However, I know some of you won't be here for the afternoon, so get out your little button right now and we'll just talk about them. Everybody have it handy? You have to keep it handy at all times or it will not work. Okay? You fellas, when you leave in the morning, put your little button in your pocket with your loose change, and you ladies, keep them in your billfold with your loose change, and every time you see that button during the day, when you're out shopping, or when you're paying for something, or when you're doing something other than writing, remember that the only way to succeed in this business is to keep your butt on the chair and finish your writing process. Okay? That's the only way. It's hard work, whether you're researching a market or whether you're researching how to work on your craft of writing, or whether you're just writing sentence after sentence after sentence after sentence and you're sick of your writing. It's still all about keeping your butt on the chair and staying focused, okay? So now we don't have anything fun to do at the end of the workshop. I do have a couple things I want to remind you of. Yes, I am a writer first and foremost. The books on the very top of the display are published through Lucent Books. They do work for hire. If anybody wants to write nonfiction for work for hire, you might look them up. I enjoyed doing those books. They were very hard because it's like an incredible amount of research that you have to condense down into just a smaller amount of text. They were very fun though. If you go down one tier, you'll see the Meerkat book. The Meerkat was my very first one, and I still sell more Meerkats than just about any because everybody loves Meerkats. But that's my baby because that was the very first one, and everybody remembers your first book. That was through Capstone Press, which is part of Bridgestone. I think that's right, Bridgestone and Capstone. Then the next tier down, you see Mushroom Pictures and the Automobile. Now those are my favorites for another reason. Those were written for Scholastic. I think you've probably heard of Scholastic. And when I got that contract from Scholastic, the first thing that went through my brain, and some of you who are my age or maybe a little older will remember those little Scholastic forms. Now we don't have those forms. Everything's electronic and you tell your teacher and blah, blah, blah. But you remember scribbling in besides a picture you wanted? And I used to do that when I was a kid because we could afford one. And it was so hard to choose one that would be. So that was kind of full circle for me and kind of fun. And I hope you guys have one of those stories soon, if not already, in your world. Linda probably does. How many of you are published already in one form or another? Woo, that's great. Congratulations. No wonder you have such big membership. That's great news. So you understand. The bottom tier, the blue book, and between the orangey and yellow ones, that's called What Really Matters to Me. And that's another one of my favorites. I have kind of few favorites, don't I? That one was through the Writer's Digest book people. You've probably heard of them. If you've written anything or read anything about writing, you've heard of the Writer's Digest people. And that was fun because I got to go to Cincinnati where they did a self-journaling workshop. All these books that they had out for this particular imprint, the Walking Stick Press imprint, were about journaling and how to use journaling for different things. So they had us all come to Cincinnati, all of us authors, and we did journaling workshops around the city. That was fun. At the end of the day, we went to this big banquet and they had put that book cover on it, the biggest cake I've ever seen in my whole life. So that was pretty good to see your own book on a cake cover. I guess. I don't remember how the cake tasted. I didn't care about that. So I am a writer first, which means I bring that up to let you know that I have empathy for everything I'm going to pick on you for. Okay. I'm gonna pick on you. As a book doctor, I'm the devil's advocate. I'm gonna help you see the things that an editor does not want to see when your work comes in. I'm gonna be the person who is going to keep your foot going through the door instead of being stopped at the door. Does that make sense? So you can learn to do this yourself, which is what the afternoon workshop is about, self-editing without self-destructing. But you can also, you can use me if you need to. A lot of my clients are folks who have full-time jobs, they write when they can, and then they send it off for me to edit for them because they don't want to go through that process. They don't have the time to go through that process, and that's fine. Some of them are folks who have an idea and some research, and maybe they want someone to help ghostwrite it, and that's fine too. But you don't have to hire somebody like me. You can learn to do it yourself. We'll talk about that this afternoon. How many of you will not be here this afternoon on self-editing? Be sure and email me. I have it on a sheet up here, my email if you don't have it. And ask me to send you my self-editing without self-destructing article. Came out in Byline, and I have the okay from the old Byline magazine editor, Marcia Preston, to let those go. So I will copy and email or send them to you through the mail. I don't want to scan that, so just let me know and I'll send it to you through the regular mail. I still like regular mail. Do you guys still like regular mail sometimes? Don't you just love to go to the mailbox and find something fun? Me too. Probably because we're writers and we like to hopefully get an acceptance. I don't know, is it still the same to get an acceptance on the email compared to in the mailbox?
Oh, I would think so.
Okay.
Your publisher's clearinghouse doesn't come through email.
No, it doesn't. They come with balloons, everything, yeah. So thank you for having me, Linda. Yes, it's been a while. I have some freebies. You'll see some pens over here. You're more than welcome to take them. They actually have my website on them. I can't believe I could see that without my glasses. This morning we're going to talk about two different important things. How many of you are working on fiction projects? Okay, good. I was afraid we might have, I've done this in the past where the program director says, let's do fiction, and then I get there and 80% of the people only write nonfiction, so I'm glad to see you write fiction. Phew, that's the first major hurdle. We're going to talk about how to make your fiction as best as it can be without harming your style. Does that make sense? One of the hardest things to do is to connect with your character, and that's what we're going to talk about, the connection. Why do we need to make a connection? Why do we not want to be rejected? You all, have you ever heard of the author Richard Bach? Wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Oh,
yeah. Oh,
yes.
Good Judy. I have this little quote from him. This was in a Smithsonian magazine way back when, and he was rejected 38 more times than that for his manuscript. But then suddenly he says, I was on the cover of Time and all these people are asking, what did you do for breakfast? And a flurry of fame after his book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, came out. The fable, as some of you may or may not know, follows a seagull who has a passion for flight. It did spend almost 40 weeks on the top seller list of the New York Times bestseller list, but it came after at least 18 rejections from publishers, some of which were not too friendly, with comments such as, please, not a talking seagull, oh dear no. So, don't give up. You can have some rejections. I have a writer friend who received a rejection slip and it had a tire tread across it. How many of you received a few rejections already in your life? Anybody? Oh yeah, so you know how that feels. You don't want that to happen. So we're gonna work on how to make that not happen for you. Point of view. We're going to talk about point of view first. It's called Building a Great Story with Point of View and Character. So point of view first. Remind me, we're going to stop for a little break about what time?
11-ish.
11? Okay. Perfect. So we have to make, let me ask you this. When you're reading a novel, first thing you need to know is, when you submit your novels, short stories, whatever, how many pages do you think an editor reads before he or she decides, or an agent reads before he or she decides?
10.
I see 1. I see 2. You can say 10 because you're published and they'll give you a little bit more leeway.
That's the first, typically first chapter.
Sometimes the first chapter, if you have
Sometimes
a
last.
history, but 1 or 2 pages. You guys up here are right, 1 or 2 pages. That's why I asked you to send me 2 pages for those of you who are going to stay for this afternoon's workshop. because that's all you get. Sometimes, and I have to admit, when people have asked me to chair contests in the past, to judge contests, I read the first page or 2 pages, and I will go back and give some critique over the overall thing, but the first 2 pages tell me whether that's gonna be one of the finalists. And then I go back and work on them for the folks. But I have a finalist pile, and I have a, it's not gonna make it pile. And then I give them a little more work. I tell the finalists what they've done well, blah, blah, blah. But I try to be the same way, because I'm gonna be a snotty devil's advocate too, for you. I want your work to be the best it can be before it gets submitted anywhere. So, how do you do that? What makes your work not become rejected first? When you're reading a novel, why do you reject a novel after the first page or 2? Somebody raise your hand. This is gonna be real interactive.
Description of something that's boring.
Boring description right off the bat, yes.
If I don't think I'm even gonna like the character.
Okay, so if you don't make a connection with the character right away,
Unrealistic dialogue.
unrealistic dialogue, we're gonna talk more about that this afternoon for sure. Yes, any others that make you just say no? Okay,
Prologue.
a prologue, lengthy prologue. Sometimes a prologue is necessary to set a different time period or something like that, yes, but you're just against prologues altogether, is that right, Mike?
So many agents are.
Okay, oh, so many agents are, well, that's probably true, yes.
Profanity.
Okay, profanity, all right, and we all have our individual reasons too, but you'll notice that a lot of them have to do with some of the same things. Character connection, boring visual display, a long narrative maybe in the opening without, what I'm trying to get at here is an emotional connection. If you don't have that, you're not gonna continue on with the novel. Even in memoir writing, if you don't have a strong emotional connection with the sound of that person who's writing the memoir, or even nonfiction, a slice of life piece of any kind, you're gonna reject it, either as a reader, and if you're submitting, an editor and agent will also. So remember, that's the main thing. So point of view, you have to first choose point of view. How many know what I mean when I say point of view? How many know what I mean when I say first person point of view? What does that mean? Somebody tell me.
Speaking
Narrator's in the story.
Say that
The
again.
narrator is in the story.
I
From my point of view.
want to.
You're saying the same thing, yes, it's all from
One
the I point of view. I point of view, very good. Now, what about third person?
sees everything.
She.
She or he, yes, but not sees everything, that's omnipotent. The third person, it can be omnipotent, but I'm saying the right one.
You're staying in the point of view of one person
That's it,
in one
yes,
scene.
but it's not I, yes, staying in the viewpoint of one person, and that person is not coming from an I perspective, that's third person. Now, very often, I see folks who write several points of view in one novel, and that doesn't usually fly, especially for first-time novelists. However, romances often are written from a male point of view and a female point of view, back and forth, back and forth. Some suspenses are written from maybe protagonist and antagonist point of view, back and forth. Sometimes from 2 or 3 main characters when you get into a mainstream novel. How many of you have trouble with multiple points of view, either when you're reading them or when you're writing them? Anybody have trouble with that? Anybody get confused? Yes, Rick?
Well, yeah, I've been told many times that my point of view needs work. Apparently I have trouble.
Apparently Rick has trouble with his point of view.
Well, it depends, you know, you have to start out the scene with exactly whose point of view it is, like.
You win, yes, that's the key, and we're gonna talk about how to do that. You have to know whose point of view it is. You already know as a writer, but are we getting it as the reader? Are we hearing and seeing what you are trying to get out of this little noggin of yours? Is it coming through on the page? And that's what I'm gonna try and help you learn how to do today. If you do use multiple points of view, they have to be balanced. You might have, for example, I'm gonna use fried green tomatoes. You have 1 or 2 point of views, you have several characters. John Mishner, is that right? John Mishner?
James.
James.
Sorry, I had a little that's that no more dynamic that we're talking about. James Mishner, he wrote from kind of an omnipotent, but you got different points of view of those people as you wrote. more today, we're seeing, genres that are just basically one point of view, 2 point of views, based on the type of categories they all wanna put you in on a shelf, which is understandable, that's the way the publishers work, so we have to adhere to that. So romances, yes, you can do back and forth between male and female. Most often, they're all from the female's point of view. Westerns are almost always from the John Wayne's point of view. But you can do multiples, but they have to be balanced. I remember doing a few manuscripts over the years that you're in one point of view for 50 pages, and then another point of view all of a sudden. And that's not fair with the reader, because we've given this person value, we've given this point of view value, but now are we supposed to switch our value? And is it gonna be equal for another 50 pages? Sometimes it's just one page in the middle after a bunch, and you can't do that. If you have multiple points of view, they must be balanced. So, yes, you can have first person, yes, you can have third person, and yes, you can have multiple if they are balanced. You got it, yeah, okay. Have you ever been thrown off, who writes this way? I think it's Nicholas Sparks. He writes back and forth from paragraph to paragraph, and I just throw those books. I try to read one every once in a while, and does that make you crazy, or am I the only one? Okay. Yes.
I want to appeal as a reader to make it clear who the speaker is at all times. I'm so tired of counting paragraphs backwards to figure out.
We're talking about dialogue now.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but yes, let's talk about point of view, because we can get confused on point of view too. Here is a sample. Are you guys ready? Let's count the point of view, shall we? This is from Gary Provost, Make Your Words Work. He gives this sample of a poor point of view. George Amiga stood outside of the old Victorian house in Connecticut holding his 3-iron and eyeing the plastic golf ball. This time, he thought, this time I will hit it to the tree with one stroke. Ruth McCartney, standing at her window in the living room, wondered what on earth George was doing. George glanced at his watch. Where was Keith? Keith was supposed to join him for this game on the lawn. And what about Ernie Wallace? He thought suddenly. His heart started racing as he realized what might have happened to Ernie. Keith was upstairs. He and Strunk had finally persuaded the college girls to come to the room, and now they had to do some fast talking to impress the young ladies. So whose story is it? And do we care?
We don't care.
That's the problem right there. We don't care. Yes, Linda.
And sometimes they give the dog and the horse and all of them points of view, and that.
Sometimes.
Is that James Harriet?
They do, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of the story about Jack and Jill? Okay, I have handouts here. Who has young ladies?
I'll stand up.
Do you see how it is? Don't unfold it, okay? Just read the top one when you get it. And I want you to be thinking about Jack and Jill. And I'll do this side.
Oh,
Okay.
I guess I could just,
I want you
here,
to think
pass
about
them, just pass them around.
Jack and Jill. And you read this first
Pass it
one.
around. Send it down.
We're gonna talk about it.
Now. If you get a bunch, just pass it behind you.
Okay, are you reading? What do you think about this Jack and Jill story? Is it one you've heard before?
A little wordy.
Really? Oh, gee.
Give Mike a chance to catch up. It is a little wordy.
Kind of a little redundant.
You forgot your own. Watch your feet.
And a guy was really in this way.
That's probably true too. Okay. All right. sent you this is because I want you to think outside the box with Jack and Jill, obviously. What do you not like about it? Okay, wait a minute, what do you like about it? Let's be positive first.
Spelled correctly?
Okay, good grammar.
It tells a story. Maybe not well, but it tells a story.
It does tell a story, you get a semi-story, okay, what else?
You get a feeling for Jack.
Okay, so is it in Jack's point of view? Okay, that's the main thing we're talking about this morning, right now, right? So you do know it's in Jack's point of view, but it's as boring as heck, isn't it? Okay,
It's telling, it's
Pardon?
telling, it's
Telling.
totally
telling,
telling.
not showing,
Not
okay.
showing.
I want you to think about what you just said. It's telling and not showing. So as writers, how are we gonna fix poor Jack's point of view so we care about him? It's all about emotional connection and caring. That's why you're not turning the page in that novel, remember? How would you revise it?
Remove all the distancing words.
Okay.
I'd start with, you've been thinking about her since dinner.
Do me a favor and flip open the bottom and read that one out.
Definitely better.
It's still Jack's point of view. What is better about this one?
It's interesting. It gives a better picture.
Okay, it's more visual.
The emotional content.
They do have emotional connection. What's changed about it? What has happened to the
Action, not
sentences?
exposition.
You're showing. Yeah, you're showing.
Action, not exposition.
Action words. Look up at the first one again. Jack felt happy. And the second one, Jack stumbled over a hay bale. You're showing it, okay? We're gonna talk about, passive verbs later on this afternoon when we do self-editing, but passive verbs, write that down. If you're not gonna be here this afternoon, write down passive verbs on a note to yourself. I don't do big slideshow presentations. You have to write yourself. Old school. Okay, so it's all about an intensity of emotion that comes across better with action verbs. Point of view is so crucial. You can see that, what if this were written from a narrator point of view? It would be even worse, you know? So, sometimes, some of us who grew up had to do summaries in school all the time, reports, and we fell back on this easy type of a writing, but we can't do that as creative writers. We have to be a little bit more interesting, as someone said. Yes, it's more interesting. It draws you in. It gives you that emotional connection. That's the key. So now I want you to do your Jack and Jill story. Turn the paper over, and please don't do one with Jack as the main character who's in love with Jill. Think of it outside the box now. What other ways could you use the things in the Jack and Jill story? The bucket, the hill, maybe an accident later. There's a tumbling. What type of fun could you have with that? You work on that for just a little bit, and then we'll read some of those out loud. So make a little list first of the different elements in the original Jack and Jill story, and how can you play with that?
You still wanted his POV?
I want you to have your liberty.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your liberty. It's time for you to be creative. Are you gonna be in Jack's point of view? Are you gonna be in Jill's? Are they gonna be humans? Are they gonna be from another world? You work with what is your background and let us hear your Jack and Jill story. It doesn't have to be long. Have some fun with it. You guys having fun? Everybody have a sentence or two? Couple more minutes. I have a question. How many of you started to revise your very first sentence before you got through it?
Just the second
Second sentence, okay. Do we have any brave souls who would like to share a word or two? Do you feel like it might? Okay,
I'll read it.
come up here.
Okay.
Be easier for everyone to hear if he does.
I didn't really do the Jack and Jill story.
That's okay, that's all right, that's what creative license.
We'd known Jill all our lives. She was the kind of rare beauty to make a man flush red and lose his words. Or so we thought. We'd seen it more than a time or two. But Jack, he was different. He had a confidence that we all resented, a way of carrying himself that stood out. That, and where Jill hadn't noticed any of us, she noticed Jack. And where we resented him before, we thoroughly loathed him now.
Right, okay. What do you like about it? That's good, that's very good, yeah. Whose point of view are we in?
Yeah, friends.
Who's that?
A friend. Yours.
Not Jack's and not Jill's, which is good, but we are in that point of view, aren't we? It was well done. Okay, what do you like about it? Yes, Ruth? Okay, do you have something else you want to say about it?
No.
Just waiting. What do you like about Mike? What were the positives about it?
It's entertaining.
Why do you suppose it was entertaining?
Their feelings
Yeah.
really came across.
Okay, he made that connection. There we have it again, the emotional connection. You're gonna hear me repeat it a few times. What were any specific words that made us connect to it that you can think of?
Loved.
Loathed is strong instead of didn't like. Okay, didn't is a weak verb. Anything else that stands out? I like just a little bit of element of tension in there too.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Anybody else feel brave? Come on up here.
Now, what I did is I wrote in this new, deep viewpoint, style of writing, where, when you're writing from, it's third person, but it's like you're writing in first person.
Come on up here.
Okay, because you don't say, oh, I'll just,
I know. They grab it.
I know, but I have this huge voice.
Well, I do too if you want me to use my mom's voice.
Okay, so Jack wants to take a stroll up the hill tonight. Has he ulterior motives? Their usual evening walks had taken on a different feel. The way he looks at me, like he wants to consume me. He had actually touched her long hair the other night. Was he getting ready to kiss her? Do I want him to kiss me? What's going to happen on the hill?
Okay. What do you like about it?
Build suspense.
Okay, there's a suspense, okay. What else? Did we stay in one person's point of view?
No.
Yes.
Read your last 3 lines.
The last 3 lines. Was he getting ready to kiss her? Do I want him to kiss me?
There you are.
Yep.
You went from, does he?
No.
Yeah, you went from her to I. Do I want him to kiss me?
Well, yes, but you're talking, that's an inner thought. And it's in with,
Italics then.
yeah, it would be an italic.
We didn't see that, did we?
No.
No.
Okay, gotcha. So it stayed in No, if it were in italics and an inner thought, it would still be, does she want him to kiss me? Does she want him to kiss
No,
her?
but if it's an inner thought, you're going to say, do I want him to kiss me? Because that's your inner thought.
No, not really. We're gonna talk
You and I
more
are gonna
about.
have to talk about that.
Yeah, we are. Internal thought, we'll just go off on it for just a minute because it is kind of important and it is confusing. Internal thought is a short emotional thought. Do I want him to kiss me? Does she want him to kiss her? If you're gonna stay in third person, you gotta stay in third person even in the internal thought, really and truly. Then you would use quotes and say it out loud if she said it out loud.
Right.
But you don't. We'll talk more about that and we'll try and get some more examples. We'll go online at lunch, okay?
Okay.
But usually if you're in third person, you need to stay in third person even with the internal thought. It's just a shorter emotional thought. It's almost like a quick, almost like a swearing or a fright or something that is quick and emotional. It's a fine line, but if you're in third person, you should stay in third person. Okay, anybody else have one you want to share one? Okay, come on up. What are you learning through this process? First of all, first draft doesn't always cut it. So a part of writing is always rewriting and rewriting.
Okay, this is the Jack and Jill thing. Okay, move over, Bessie, Jack mumbled, pushing the cow's bottom out of the way. He grabbed the milk pail and stool. I'm sorry I'm in a hurry, but I've got to get water, and I'm meeting Jill at the bottom of the hill. He placed the stool next to her and got in position. Bessie turned to look at him, slowly chewing her oat. When she flung her rope of a tail to swat the fly biting her, the tip slapped Jack upside the head, sending his hat swinging across the room. Ah, Bessie, I said I'm in a hurry. Leaving the hat on the ground, he began to milk her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. How many points of view are we in?
One.
Do we almost switch to Bessie there for a minute?
Yes.
Okay, you gotta be careful not to go into animals' point of view. It's hard to do sometimes, so make sure that you mind all those things. Did anybody have a different example than what we've heard so far about, yes, you wanna come read yours? Okay.
Jill scurried up the hill. Jack couldn't stop talking about how great he was, and she needed to put some distance between them. Unfortunately, he kept pace with her and kept droning on. Did I tell you about the time I won the race against those seniors? Yep, I beat every one of them. Finally, the well at the top of the hill came into view, and Jill rushed over to fill her pail. Jack, trying to show off, sprinted past her and tripped. Jill watched with a grin as he tumbled down the hill.
Okay, I heard some applause. I think there might be some positives here. What do we have? What's the positive about it?
Good action. Good, yeah, good action.
Whose point of view are we in? Jill's, yes. And there's a little bit of an edge there. I guess you all picked up on that. One of the other positives is there was dialogue right away. So be sure to put in dialogue when you can. I think that's really important to draw in people into your novels, into your point of view. It also gives us a little clue about how that person sounds. And that's always good. We want to hear. The more senses, the better, yes? When you're reading a first page of a novel, don't you prefer to have as many senses? Maybe not in the list of things, but when they come across like that naturally, that's good. Anybody have another one? Rick, come on. He's so patient. He's been waving and waving.
Jack-eyed Jill warily.
Come on up here, Rick. You're not special.
Rick, don't let anyone tell you you're not special. Okay?
Jack-eyed Jill warily. Why was she carrying that bucket? Sure, they needed water, but 10 gallons? No, something was off. Moments later, he found out what was off when, out of nowhere, the bucket struck his back, sending him tumbling. Not one to go down without a fight, he reached out as he fell and grabbed Jill's ankle. Jill tumbled down the hill right behind him. The autopsy report was succinct and telling. Jack's broken crown was the cause of death. Jill's role in the accident was never discovered.
That's perfect, okay.
Yeah.
What is it about humor that makes a lasting impression? Have you all known that before? Do you have critique groups among you?
Yes.
Very many? Raise your hand if you're in a critique group, okay. If you've ever judged contests, if you've been in critique groups, you know that humor will leave more of an impression than, yes, something written tenderly will, yes, something written with an edge will, but if you can leave somebody with a little bit of humor in your writing, that's really good too. So it may not be your character style, but if you're writing a nonfiction piece, whatever, if you can work in a little humor, that's gonna make a difference. What are some of the other positives about Rick's that you liked? We were definitely in one point of view the whole time. We didn't switch point of views.
It was
Okay.
visual,
It was visual.
very visual.
Lots of action.
A little twist at the end with the fun, with the word roll. That was good. Nice job. Any questions about point of view? I know we still have a little curmudgeon over here about or snafu about the internal dialect, but we'll work on it.
We're gonna fight later?
We're gonna, later, yeah. We'll go through that. And internal dialogue is a little different. It really is. And perhaps if we were all reading that on the page and saw the italics, it wouldn't have struck us as much. Most likely it might not have. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. Yes, you have one, Phyllis.
Yes, my comment would be, what I saw was different genres.
Okay.
There was just, almost every one of them were
Throughout.
a different, fell into a different genre. Maybe kind of the same within reason, but, you know,
Right.
subgenres.
But you all did use your own style and your own imagination and your own contents of those elements, and that's what you're supposed to do as writers. That's very good. Nice. Anybody else have a comment or a question about point of view at this point? Are you comfortable with what point of view is? That's crucial to starting your character development. Anybody have any questions about that? Wonderful. So we'll take a little bit of a break. You can do what you need to do out down the hall or grab a drink, or we'll have a little fight over here. You can come watch us have a little argue about dialogue, internal dialogue. We'll be back in just a few minutes.